are interested in speaking for the public hearing, which is public hearing on the 2021 General Fund, Wastewater Fund, and Water Fund budgets. Anybody that is present and would like to speak, please put your name in the chat. The chat is arranged so that all chats will come directly to me. Do not pass go. Do not communicate with everybody. You're obviously more than welcome to communicate with other people, but the purpose of the meeting, I have commandeered the chat box so people can communicate directly with me. So that is our informal and formal sign-in with regard to the public hearings, and then later for public comments as well. And seeing nobody in the waiting room at this point in time, and also that we are slightly after 7, I'll ask Devin, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yay. So we'll call the public hearing officially open. It is November 17 of 2020, City of Cortland Common Council meeting via Zoom. And we have a public hearing on the 2021 General Fund budget, wastewater budget, and water fund budget. Is there anybody present that would like to speak regarding any one of these 3 budgets? That's bad. And we will have a second call. Is there anybody present that would like to speak on the city's proposed budgets in the wastewater fund, water fund, or general fund for the year 2021? And third and final call, is there anybody present that would like to speak regarding the budgets? General fund, wastewater fund, water fund for 2021. All right, hearing none and seeing none, we'll call the budget hearings closed and call the meeting to order. Everyone can please rise if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. As usual, I will mute everybody with the exception of myself. It gets confusing sometimes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You've got the ability to turn your microphones on and off, and so that I don't appear to be 3 feet, 8 inches tall. Let me readjust. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Public comments. If there's anybody present that would like to speak, you have the opportunity to share your thoughts up to 3 minutes in length, address to council and to council as a whole. We ask that comments are directed to city business. Please sign your name in the chat. Give a couple seconds. And then after public comments, we are going to the mayor's reports. There's 2 things that I would like to, well, one I'd like to ask and a second to report on. All right, so nobody in the public comments. First of all, Executive Order 203 from the Governor. Executive Order 203 from Governor Andrew Cuomo asked that every municipality, every governing body in New York State that has a law enforcement agency needs to review and potentially recommend changes in terms of how business is done. So potentially on purpose. And we have had some meetings. I'll ask if Bruce Titler would like to jump in. Bruce, I'm going to talk a little bit about the public hearings, and then if you'd like to add anything, by all means. We're talking about soliciting for input from the general public in three different manners. One has been some small group meetings with different stakeholders throughout the community. Second, there is a survey that will be going out to a segment of the population. Chief Catalano has been coordinating with a professor, faculty member up at SUNY Cortland in terms of the instrument and how to go about it. And the third one, this is what we're getting to, we'd like to have public forums and the opportunity for people to speak directly to myself, police department command staff, and city council regarding your thoughts. We're going to have a document that we will release. I've shared this with council earlier today via email, but our first public forum will be next Monday, the 23rd, and it's going to be 1 to 3 p.m. You don't have to write this down. This will all be public. Our second public forum will be the following Monday, November 30th, from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. And then the third and final public forum, Thursday, December 3rd, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. These will all be virtual. They'll be via Zoom. And the purpose of these is to give the general public the opportunity for you to share your thoughts of what is desired in the City of Cortland's police service. People are asked to reserve a 3-minute time frame to share their thoughts about the police department with us. You can reserve your 3 minutes by contacting the mayor's office, mayor@cortland.org. If you choose to not reserve a time frame, you can sign up the day of, the evening of. However, it might be difficult if there are a large number of people who are asking to have the opportunity to speak. And you can reserve a time by calling the mayor's office as well, 753-0872. This will all be pushed out on the website and through other manners of communication, including social media as well. And we're asking people to reserve a 15-minute window of opportunity. So if you have the ability to attend one of the hearings, you want to speak, we're asking, okay, can you say 5:15 to 5:30, or 5:30 to 5:45? It's kind of like when you need a service tech to come to your house and they say, well, you got to be there from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. We're not going to ask for that large of a time frame, just 15 minutes, and that should allow us to accommodate everybody appropriately. Our goal is to schedule city residents first and then non-residents who are stakeholders if time allows. If people are not able to or are not comfortable speaking in a public forum, you are welcome to submit written comments. And those can come directly via email or they can be mailed to City Hall. Email is the same, mayor@cortland.org. And the mailing address, 25 Court Street. It's pretty simple if you live in the city. It's Cortland, New York, 13045. Who knew? 13045 for everybody throughout the city. Our goal here is to hear thoughts, and then there will be a draft in terms of some recommendations that will be coming forward, most likely end of December, possibly January. And we have some different questions that will be put forward that in the document will show how widespread we have been with regard to our discussions in the small group and how thorough we are being in terms of our review. So we have taken the governor's executive order very seriously, and we are continuously working on it, but we are soliciting, giving people the opportunity to share their thoughts on the functioning of the City of Cortland's Police Department, not law enforcement in general, not law enforcement in other agencies, but law enforcement for the City of Cortland and what is the desire of what our law enforcement department should be doing by the city residents. So we'll be sharing more as we go, and part of that sharing is also the listening. Next up, the other thing I'd like to ask everybody to entertain a moment of silence. We have a former employee, Frank Wood, who unfortunately passed away, former police officer, believe he was hired in 1969 and served faithfully all the way up through 1990. So if we can all observe a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. Minutes from our last meeting. Do we have a motion to consider filing the minutes as is? There were some minor modifications, I believe. John Bennett, and then second, Katie Silliman. Kat McCarthy, there were some suggested changes that you made. They were, I don't believe it changed or altered any of the content, though. Am I correct?
Correct.
Very good. Katie Silliman, you've got a hand up.
Was one of them adding me to the meeting because I wasn't absent?
That was not included in my list, but it's important.
Thank you. It had my board report.
Very true. All right, we need to update the attendance for the meeting. Any other comments? Hearing none, everybody on council in favor of filing and accepting the minutes as is, please make sure your microphone's on. Give an aye and a wave. 1, 2, 3, ready? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. There we go. I think the counting might have confused some people. I apologize. I'll try not to count anymore this evening. First up on our official agenda, we have a presentation and then discussion current status and projected activity timeline for the Clinton Avenue Gateway Project. We do have one of the city employees, Nick Dovey from our DPW, and Mike Altieri from BCA, engineer Scott Berto from We Create Potentials, who is administering the grants, and we'll have an opportunity for Q&A, but I'd like to hand it over to these gentlemen. Did you guys do rock, paper, scissors? Nick Dovey raised his hand first, so Nick, you have the privilege of the floor.
Cool, thank you. I'd like to go first just because I just got a brief overview. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, I got a brief overview of how the project's phased. Then I'll turn it over to Mike and Jeremy Glenn from BCA and also Jan Salzman from Cedarwood. I think Jeremy has a quick little slideshow. Then at least you'll have some context of what we're actually discussing. And then Scott can follow up last with the finances, if that's okay with you, Brian.
Excellent.
Okay. So as Brian said, we have Scott Berto here, Jeremy Glenn, Jan Salzman, and Mike Altieri. They are either with the financial division or engineering firms that worked on different phases of this project. I'll kind of go into that here, but the purpose of the Gateway Project in the first place was to make the city of Cortland more attractive, inviting for motorists traveling on Interstate 81. The three-phased approach let us replace subsurface obsolete infrastructure first, then concentrate on the more aesthetically appealing streetscape items after the extensive utility upgrades have been completed. 3 separate but related projects have been dubbed phases 1, 2, and 3. I will provide briefly an overview of each of these projects before handing this over to the financial experts and the engineers. Phase 1 was designed by CNS. The proposed work includes milling and resurfacing of Clinton Avenue from the Riverside Plaza entrance to Pomeroy. So it's basically just 81 to the intersection of Pomeroy, River, and Clinton Ave. It's basically the bridge. It includes enhanced crosswalks at Clinton Avenue at River, Pomeroy, that intersection, and the entrance to the Riverside Plaza. Also includes new pavement markings, signage, some installation of ornamental street lights, and some decorative panels. 3 masonry walls with wayfinding signage are also part of this plan, including some minor landscaping. So the city put this project out to bid originally in December of 2018, but we did not receive any interest. When phase 1 was rebid recently, we got 2 bids. The lower bidder was approximately $300,000 over the engineer's estimate. I will let Scott speak later on what the current plan is to make up the funding shortfall. Phase 2, this work was completed earlier this season by Adhan Piping. The reason that Phase 2 came before Phase 1 was just due to funding expiration dates. So it was a use it or lose it type of situation, so we went ahead with that project before the other phases. That project consisted of simply the installation of an 8-inch water main from Main Street to the intersection of Pomeroy on Clinton. The scope also included some hydrants, water service connections, partial abandonment of the existing water main, some tree removal, and some temporary restoration. The amount for this venture was just under $1.3 million and actually came in about $500,000 below the engineer's estimate. That brings us to the bigger project of the 3, Phase 3. This was basically taken on by BCA and Cedarwood engineering firms. Cedarwood did a lot of the utility design, while BCA concentrated on a lot of the streetscape aspects of the project. The public improvements on Phase 3 are full depth street reconstruction of Clinton Ave between Main Street and Pomeroy. The project will provide about 3/4 of a mile of newly constructed asphalt paving and bike lanes, colored textured crosswalks, ADA compliant sidewalks, pedestrian friendly traffic signal improvements, new lighting, an eco-friendly stormwater management system, which is basically your bioretention, and the existing sanitary sewer will be totally replaced. So bid tabulations were received back in October. We had 6 bidders on this project, with GDB Incentives and Sons as the low bidder at just over $9 million. It was $9,088,000. That is approximately $2 million below the engineer's estimate for this portion of the project. Their package has been received. Our engineering firms went through it with a fine-tooth comb. Corporation Counsel already looked at their proposal, and that's what the next agenda item is to move forward with them on Phase 3. I called all the references. They're fully vetted. I'm pretty comfortable that they can handle a project of this magnitude, and look forward to working with them. The tentative schedule, I think, I sent out just a few days ago to council, so I hope everybody got that, which outlines the project will commence in the spring and basically be 2 construction seasons with an estimated substantial completion date of November 2022. The only other work really slated for the gateway, the gas company does have some stuff in there I want you guys to be aware of that they're going to be replacing very soon over the winter months to get out of the contractor's hair in the spring. And there is talks of continuing this project or having another phase that goes up Groton Ave or down River Street. But at this point, none of that has been engineered. The topic of this meeting is just the 3 phases of the project that have been engineered and we have out there. Do you guys have any questions about the phasing of the project or the bid results or anything like that?
Council.
Okay, well, I don't know how you guys want to go about your thing. If Jeremy, you want to go, or Mike, or anybody has utility questions for Jan, but any way you guys see fit is fine with me.
Yeah, I have, we put together a very kind of brief presentation just with some visuals to describe what Nick has. And we'll go through the permitting a little bit and introduce the project team. So I'm Mike Altieri with BCA Architects and Engineers. Going through the Brady Bunch squares here, we have Jan Saltzman. He's below me on my screen, and right next to him on my screen, Jan's with Cedarwood, and right next to Jan on my screen is Jeremy Glenn. He's got the BCA blazer on there. I'm not sure how that looks on your screens, but that's how I see it. So I think I can share my screen. We're gonna try this. Nope, the host has disabled participant screen sharing. Is that okay?
Hang on. Mike, are you gonna be
station from Mayor Tobin?
Yep. Give me a second here. Try it now.
Okay. Ooh, that is very fancy. Okay.
Hey, it worked.
Is it? You see it?
Yes.
Wow. All right. Okay, so I think Nick did a very good job describing the limits of this project. Essentially, we're looking at coming from Main Street, and we have Church Street intersection shown on there as well, and going all the way down to Pomeroy Street. And like I said, I wanted to introduce the project team. These are our contacts here. If anyone wants to do a screenshot and email us with any questions after the meeting, feel free. And I'm sure Mr. Dolby can provide those for you. I'll just go real quickly to an overall map so you can get a visual of where this is. So we're looking from, can you see my mouse?
Yes.
Oh, splendid. All right. So we're coming from the intersection of Pomeroy and Clinton Avenue. This is where phase 1 is. And we're picking up right where phase 1 ends with pavement reconstruction and coming all the way down to Main Street. One feature I think Nick touched on is really what this is going to feel like when we're done. Right now, the road is a little over wide. It has the feeling of street parking when really that's improper for the true width of the road. We are taking the road in a little bit. Otherwise, it's really going to have a much different aesthetic appeal. I think Nick described some of the practices that are going in there. It's going to look much prettier. We're trying to improve the aesthetic with plantings, vegetation, trees. That's hopefully the real takeaway we can get for it with this project. All the utilities will be underground, so unfortunately we won't be able to take advantage of the site of those long term. But what we really want to leave here with is a much better aesthetic with the street. It's hard to make a street pretty, and we're trying. So, any questions? I think I can scroll down here. And actually, maybe at this point, Jeremy, do you want to discuss the bid results? First, with what we have here for the low bids.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks, Mike. Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so as Nick stated, there were 6 bidders, and you can see the bids range from just over 9 million upwards to just under 13 million, kind of 2 groupings, under 10 million and then pretty much 11 and over to 12. So we feel really good about the low bidder. Like Nick said, they did a little bit of research. We looked into some of their references. Everything checks out. And I like the fact that their bid was grouped in with a couple of the others. We don't feel like they're unreasonably low, even though the bid was 2 million under engineer's estimate. We got a feeling that that may be the case heading in, just because there's not a lot of large jobs that are out there right now. And a 2-year construction season was attractive, and I think that the contractors decided to go after this job relatively strongly. You want to scroll that ahead, Mike? Again, as Nick mentioned, this is just kind of a brief look at the construction phasing for the job. We've spent the last couple of months going through advertisement, bid opening, and here we are at award. Getting the contractor his notice to proceed over the next week or so, today through the next following days. And then he's going to be looking at a beginning of construction. He has led me to believe, say March, April in the spring. And then until we get a real handle on what that's going to look like, tentatively we're holding 2 construction seasons for substantial completion. And then with a potential to overrun into 23 for some final plantings and some aesthetics and things like that, just in case they run into October, November timeframe, and we're really unable to complete some of that beautification stuff in a weather that's just not ready for that. So that's basically what we're looking at. I think we're going to be probably installing the off-street detour right around the beginning of the project. There will be local access to everything along Clinton Avenue, but predominantly through traffic will be routed around on Port Watson and Pomeroy. I think that should really cover it, unless you guys have additional questions on that preliminary schedule and some of the potential impacts during construction. Is that it? Correct, Mike?
Yeah, unless there's any questions.
It looks wonderful.
It's going to be a tough 2 years. The street is going to be torn up. But it's going to look completely different when we're done. Yes.
Do we want to turn this over to Scott Berto to talk about the very uncomplicated financial aspects of the project?
I think the gentleman with the iPad had a question.
Tom Michaels.
Yes, regarding heavy truck traffic, they're going to be routed to the next closest exit?
Yeah, it's part of the detour. Part of the detour plan is to push them around along 81 and not traveling through the local streets and other network around the city.
Okay, thank you.
Ken McCarthy.
I just wanted to confirm, did I hear correctly that the detour is going to be in effect for 2 years through the full construction?
Yes, through the main construction season, the offsite detour will be in place. Again, it'll be for pass-through traffic. The contractor is required to keep local access open for residences and businesses. And they are going to be they're going to be isolated to probably block by block segments. So for the most part, most of Clinton Ave will be available to be accessed. We just don't want people traveling there and then getting stuck and have to be rerouted through city streets.
Thanks.
Yeah, actually on that, we did have a very lengthy permitting process with DOT. And I think Jeremy would agree that maybe the hardest part of this whole detour process was getting access to Starbucks and the other businesses right at the beginning there. And we've worked out a good plan to make sure those folks are kept in with access so that we don't leave them out hanging.
I have a question. I want to follow up on what Tom said. I want to make sure I was understanding correctly. When this is all said and through, are we still going to be having those big trucks get off at exit 11 and go up to 81, so they're not coming through our city streets, so a shortcut through the city? Is that still the plan, or is that not the plan?
When you mean when the project's over, Bruce?
When the project's over, and we have these beautiful streets, are there going to be signs on 81 telling the truckers to get off at exit 10 or exit 11? Probably exit 12 would be exit 12, and over to 281. There's
not. We approached the state and talked to them about that, and they said you cannot detour trucks from truck routes.
So they're going to be coming off our streets?
That's where they're supposed to go.
Okay. We'll talk later.
That's the answer I got from the state was basically.
I agree. 13, correct, Nick?
Yep, it's a state road.
It's a state road anyway, so.
I get that. Yeah. Okay.
Jeremy, one question I have is obviously it's all of Clinton Ave is actually my ward if you're not familiar with that. And we have a lot of problems with heavy trucks and large trucks in my ward to begin with. So it's going to be a big concern to make sure, especially going to Marietta and I really hoping, or maybe Nick's even thought about it, that I'd really like to keep limited traffic on Pomeroy Rice Street. So, I mean, I don't mind the local traffic, but trucks are going to be a big issue with daycare, everything down through there. So I don't know what you've done to address that.
If you're referring to during construction, the state has allowed us to put additional signage on 81 so that the trucks are not going around the detour that's signed.
Well, I mean, I kind of know what you're saying, Troy. The trucks going to Marietta are still going to go to Marietta.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I mean, if we can, somewhat persuade them to get off either Homer or Polkville, obviously we can do what we can do. For sure, right? Obviously, we can't, we've been trying to fix it and just it's impossible, but we're going to get calls on it, so.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I guess I'll begin my presentation on the funding. Can everybody hear me okay?
Very well.
Okay. As Nick indicated, my name is Scott Berto. I'm the owner of WCP Consultants. I think I've met a few of you in presentations in the past. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and give you guys an update on the funding. Probably outside of design, one of the most complex issues with the project. I wanted to try to provide you some accurate breakdown of where we're at. I hope everybody got a copy of the information that I sent out last week with your packages to give you a little overview. As I indicated, the city is looking to change the future of economic development in your community for the next 40 years. These infrastructure improvements will last 40 years and beyond. The development and business travel and build where the infrastructure is. So it's important to indicate that, this is not only a streetscape project and changing your gateway, but it's changing the long-term development of your downtown and your entrance. The problem with that is the state does not have a one-stop shop to provide funding for this type of project. You're looking at between all of the phase 1, the gateway, the phase 3, and future developments in the DRI, about a $34 million project. And so a number of people for the last 7 or 8 years have been working on funding between your staff and Toma Development and myself and the engineers. We've sought out a number of grants and have been pretty successful. To break that down for you and give you a little overview of where we're at, phase 1 and 2 of phase 2, the water project, was recently completed. The water main, the valves, all the hydrants were replaced along Clinton Avenue as part of a community development block grant program. Adhan Piping, a local firm there, did the project. It's been completed at about $1.5 million was the final cost. To fund that portion of the project, there was two community development grants awarded for $1.5 million, and then an additional $305,000 in program income that the city had from other CDBG programs that you designated for use in that program. With the CDBG grants, we did not cover the engineering for those projects because most of the engineering started before the grants were awarded. The development of these programs went back 4 or 5 years. The engineering started. CDBG only covered the engineering if they were RFP'd at the time of the grant award. We were previous to that. So those costs of engineering went into the WEAP alone to cover the previous engineering expenses. The administrative costs on the CDBG projects, it's important to point out that my work began with the CDBG grant through an RFP process. Community Development and Office of Community Renewal asked the city to go out to request for proposals. 2 firms qualified for those. My bid came in at like $59,000, and Toma was the other bid that was submitted, and he was at $75,000. So that's how the selection of the administration started. All of my expenses for the administration of the 2016 grant were covered by program income. My expenses on the 2018 CDBG grant were going to be covered by the grant, but with some changes to the money remaining, it was decided to put that into the WEFA loan as well and put that out over the 4 years of the loan. That the additional money that we're going to cover the administrative costs have went into the budget. There's about $516,000 left. We put in a request to Office of Community Renewal to use that money to put in new water mains, valves and hydrants along Green Bush and Washington Street. They have tentatively approved those, bringing cards on the design. That work is going to be completed by your DPW next year. That $500,000 was put into your capital budget to keep people working next year come spring. If we would have utilized the fees that you paid me out of there, that would have reduced that $500,000 and taken away some of the work they could be done because their time's not eligible for the WEFA loan where my administrative costs could be submitted to the WEFA loan. So that's why this decision was made. It was to put more money into your 2021 budget and provide more work for your DPW. The Gateway project that Nick indicated was over budget by about $300,000. Is also short in funding by $353,000. The original project was funded by a state grant. It was a $398,000 grant and a $100,000 local share. That was when the budget was at $503,000. 3 or 4 years later, without any bids last year, and the new bid, the higher number, 851, is the difference of what the city has to determine what they want to do moving forward. The thing with the other grants and the funding, they were specific to certain parts of the project that were not the gateway. So the city is going to have to utilize reserve funds to pay that difference to get the work done, or what it would be a good position to move forward is, I know the city has a bill with your state assembly and senate and needs the governor's signature in the future for the hospitality tax. This would be a great example to the governor on how the hospitality tax can improve your infrastructure, because this gateway is right there where all those hotels are. It's a project that you could easily show the governor and the state assembly and senate that this funding, the hotel tax was petitioned to the state to cover infrastructure, and here's a perfect example of how it's directly related to those hotels and the gateway to your community, and it could be a push to get that through this year in the Senate and Assembly, and finally get the governor to sign off on it. Phase 3 of the Clinton Avenue project, the large project, as they indicated, came in $2 million under budget. And this is where it gets complicated in funding. We have approximately 5 grants to cover costs of this and loan programs all on one project. And this is parts of piecing the funding together. So you had this total project of $11 million at the time where you received small grants, to cover portions of that. Your Environmental Facilities Corporation gave you a clean water grant for $995,000 towards the total project cost. So then aspects of the project were developed to cover additional costs. We went out and got a green infrastructure grant for $837,000. Now that portion of the green infrastructure grant only covers the construction of the components of the green infrastructure. So your bioswales, your sewer separation, your plantings that are retention, that will cover. It did not cover any of the engineering or the soft costs. And the same is with the EFC's Integrated Solution Grant Program. There's a $391,000 grant, which also covers those aspects of green infrastructure as well. So you've got about you've got a little over $1.2 million in just green infrastructure that cover those portions of the project directly, and no administration, no legal, no engineering. There is a small portion of water left in phase 3, about $300,000. We received a water infrastructure grant for the water portion of $755,000. It's a 60% grant, so that $300,000 of the water project that's still in phase 3 is going to be submitted to there, where 60% of that cost will be covered. The remainder of that cost will go into the loan with EFC. the remainder of that money, as Nick indicated, there's been some talk of the next phase of the project. We've had discussions with EFC for continuing the water from Clinton downriver. EFC's indicated that they would cover that if we submitted acceptable design, because the aspect of that was still the same. You're improving water, the residents of Clinton Avenue, by increasing the infrastructure size, providing more available water and pressure to them. So I believe BCNA started to some preliminary design work on that, and that will be submitted to EFC for approval. Another large grant on the phase 3 was the Climate Smart grant. It's a $2 million grant. It's a 50-50 grant. So we utilize aspects of the project like the paving, the sidewalk replacement. As part of that grant, we talked about safety pedestrian, moving kids from the college down Main Street and over to Yemen Park and down to the business district. So parts of that grant are going to cover your paving, the development of bike lanes and the repaving, the sidewalks. So these are all portions of the project that have to be done because the road's being dug up. So we took those aspects and went after additional grants to cover that. So that project's a 50-50 match. It's $2 million from the state. It's $2 million from the loans that the city were already going to take out. It also covers 50% of the administration costs, and it covers 50% of the engineering. So the engineering and the administration specific to those, some of that have been submitted. You have received one reimbursement of that. The second reimbursement is pending at the state right now. And then the remainder of those costs have been rolled into the WEFA loan as well. Additional projects as part of the overall was the Groton Avenue. It came in an estimated $7,900,000. And then the infrastructure for your DRI projects was an additional $8,600,000 estimated. So those are improvements before you come through and do all your DRI projects. The engineers thought it was important to replace the infrastructure under it because it's older, it's aging. If you're improving the infrastructure on Main Street through the DRI, there was a concern that the infrastructure on Groton that's feeding those needed to be improved. If you're increasing the water main sizes and you're providing additional water to the housing and the parts of your DRI project that are not there now, it was looked at improving the water into that. Legal cost on this project is estimated at about $375,000. A lot of that's the city staff time, which is going to be submitted for reimbursement. So some of your staff time working on this, your legal counsel working on this, will be reimbursed through the WEFA loan because it's directly related to this. The administration cost estimates at $755,000. We're nowhere near that right now, and even at the $39 million, that's a little under 2% of the total project cost. The application for your WEFA loan was $25,000, and the closing cost was $30,000. So that's where we come up with the $35 million in total project cost for every aspect of the project. The additional amounts of money are coming from your loans, EFC.
Can I ask a question? Whoa, can I just ask a quick question, Scott? Because, first of all, thank you for coming. This is pretty complex. You went through that fairly quickly. You folks are all very, very, very familiar with all these grants and monies, and I'm still wading my way through this. So that bottom line of 35.1 million, if I add all those other numbers up above that on your sheet that you gave us, is that what that number is?
That's what that number is. So that includes, so that includes the Main Street.
Is that Gateway and DRI combined, the total?
That includes the bid price on the Gateway, and includes the DRI, and it includes Groton Avenue. Those projects haven't been approved yet, but those were included in the application to WEFA for their funding. We did try to get the Gateway funded through the WEFA loan, and WEFA denied it at the time. So we were trying to seek some additional funding for that project, and WEFA denied it because WEFA was concentrating on the infrastructure.
What's the acronym you use for that loan? Is that the EPA loan?
That's the EPA loan, yeah, WEFA.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
So that's the total project cost. So on the loan side of it, some of the loans that were here outside of the EPA loan. EFC, their clean water revolving loan is $9,699,000. That's the hardship 0% loan. It was originally about a $4 million loan. We submitted the additional project cost and got them to agree to cover the additional funding for the project. On the water side of that, in addition, that's the 30% local share of the 60% grant is a low interest loan through EFC, and then the EPA loan of the $8,954,000. With the administration of these projects, they include not just the reimbursements. There's quarterly reports that are due. There's labor standard reports that are due. There's environmental and field study reports that are due. There's verifying payroll. Nick does most of the certified of the payroll before he gets it to me to submit. And I know Bruce does your MWBE. Most of those reports are sent on, and I fill them out, and Bruce verifies them and submits them. So there's since the award, there's ongoing work, even if you're not submitting reimbursements and you're not seeking additional grants. There's still continuing reporting for all these projects that are due. Most of them are quarterly reporting projects, so that's all included. And then at the end of each project, there's a closeout audit with the agencies for the city that needs to be submitted. Usually it's a meeting in person. And it's a final, like on the CDBG, there's finalized closeout paperwork and meetings, which will happen on the other grants and programs at the end of the project.
So can I ask another question that just
Yep.
piggyback on that? So quarterly reports, do you compile all those and you seek the reimbursement quarterly, or do you do it at the end of the year? How does that happen?
Every program is different. The reports are quarterly for each program as far as quarterly reporting on work complete. The city and the contract have a work plan. So you've got to go through and identify what percentage of the work plan each quarter you've met. You got to detail and provide documentation for what you've completed in that quarter. The CDBG programs were reimbursable when the city spends the money. When Nick would receive, when Jan would sign off on the work and provide it to Nick, and Nick would sign off on it, he would submit the pay apps to me, and then when they provided certified payroll, we would submit them to CDBG for payment immediately. Those were usually turned around within 1 week paperwork time to CDBG. How long it took them to turn it around is a different story. The other programs reimbursement is quarterly, like the quarterly reports with EFC. The first reimbursement from DEP on the Climate Smart took over a year because the city wasn't under contract. There were things that the city needed to complete, and there was some paperwork between the city and DEP. So even though we submitted it at the end of the year, they didn't reimburse us for quite a while. And then that held up the additional reimbursements. We didn't submit additional reimbursements until the first one was in. We didn't want to continue to submit reimbursements to them while we waited for them to approve the reimbursement. So most, your green infrastructure, the ones that are construction related, they're not going to be able to submit for reimbursement until the work happens. So they're not going to reimburse us on the green infrastructure grant program or the integrated solution program until almost the end of the project, because those green portions of the project are the last parts of the project to be submitted. A lot of this also goes by time. As Nick said, the CDBG started early because we were in danger of losing those grants. There were deadlines, so we needed to start the work early. So initially, in the beginning of the CDBG program, there was some engineering and administrative costs that weren't covered that were submitted to the loan program because that work had to start or we would have lost the money. So and the same goes for the green infrastructure program. That's almost expired twice, but we've gotten extensions both times because that's the last portion of the project. It wouldn't make sense to go in and put in bioswales and drainage now and then dig it up when you put the water and sewer in. So because we've been working closely, ESC's been involved. In the beginning, there was monthly meetings in Cortland that everybody attended to go over the project, and then it kind of went remotely and bi-monthly. So there's been coordination meetings at ESC, and representatives from DOT have been involved in, so they're constantly updated.
Just interrupt for a second. I can't even begin to imagine all the work that all you folks have put into this, and and knowing that it's government grants, all the paperwork that has to be filed and everything has to be taken care of. So my last question really is, and I don't know if you can answer this, I'm sort of concerned. These grants are fantastic, and my hat's off to all you guys that applied for these and got them. But we're talking pandemic 2020. So if we have grant money coming in 2020, is the state still committing to that? Because the state is not committing to paying a lot of other things that they are obligated to pay. They're paying 80% here and withholding there. And so, do you have any sense how it's going with construction grants? I mean, we're probably not the only ones getting these. So where is that money? Are they still saying, yeah, don't worry about it. We're gonna pay 100% in 2020?
I would say that the good thing about, if there is a positive, all your grants are under contract. If there's communities out there that don't have a signed contract by the state and the attorney general and the mayor, I would worry if I was one of those communities. But the state of Cortland is under contract with these agencies, and we've received reimbursement on some of those programs, so the money has already started to flow to the city. Other communities are receiving payment on some programs, and other agencies are being told to withhold payments for now. But they're still accepting the submission of them. I can't guarantee you what the state's going to do in 2020, but that's what we're being told. And from a legal perspective, you have contracts. A lot of the infrastructure money is bonded money or federal pass-through money, which is a positive as well because it's not coming out of the state budget. It's being committed by the federal government and passing through the state. And to receive those funds, they have to continue to provide those funds. And with EFC, those funds are just like a revolving loan fund, so they're being reinvested. Would be the best answer I have. And you are correct. There's a lot of paperwork that everybody's involved in. I would just add one thing that last winter, early spring, I think it was, I spent maybe 3 or 4 hours down there with the comptroller's office reviewing the grant program, and a number of phone calls afterwards and providing information. And the comptroller's staff indicated that the city of Cortland has one of the best grant management programs that he has seen, and that everything was in order, and he was very impressed with the process and the system that we had in place.
Okay, thanks. I will. I'm more optimistic now about this, that we're going to get this money after all. So,
and Bruce, I think I've offered it to you, and I've mentioned it to the mayor many times. If this is very complicated, as you said, there's a lot here. If any of the board members wants to sit down and go over this, I'm in Cortland a few times a month. Once construction starts, I'll be down there a lot more. I'll gladly take some time to sit down with you and go over all the grants, all the paperwork, any questions you may have. And I mean, if you have any questions tonight, I can address them for you for sure. But if you want to get into it more depth and go over everything we have, I have no problem sitting down with you and reviewing where we're at and how we got here.
No, I'm fine. I just had some broad, big picture kind of questions, and you've answered them. So, I can, in the essence of time, I can talk to you later about other things.
Yep.
Yeah, I never want to be the guy that spends the first hour of the council meeting on item number 1, but I think it's important for everyone to understand the complexity of not only the funding, but the projects themselves, the transparency that we're trying to give everyone, and just what's involved with a multi-phased, I think between the three phases of the gateway, and then the extensions off that, the DRI. There's like 10 different funding sources that all have different requirements. It's a complicated program, but I think we're doing pretty good with our internal staff and external staff and our engineers, and I think it's a step in the right direction for us. I just wanted to get the information to the public and all of you in a manner that's understandable.
If I could add just one more thing, Bruce, and it kind of goes with what you said about 2021. There was no rounds of consolidated funding applications in 2020. There was no grants available for anybody. It looks like there's not going to be any rounds of funding in 2021, or there was none in 2020. It looks like there's not going to be any in 2021. So the city is taking advantage of the last opportunities available, maybe for the foreseeable future, because there's a lot of talk that there's not going to be any more funding coming. So you're in a position to utilize what you've got when there might not be any opportunities coming up to fix that infrastructure that's much needed.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. But that's we can't solve that tonight. So thanks for those explanations.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions for Jan Salzman, the engineer on the not so glamorous portion of the project, the underground utilities? Just wanted to let you guys know that he's here, and I didn't want him to go overlooked if there was utility questions, which I didn't think there would be, but you're off the hook, Jan.
Well, you don't miss your water till it's gone, right?
Right.
Well, maybe we can put a sign up or something, Nick. And by the way, there's lots of pipes below this beautiful street, you know, so to give those engineers their due.
Well, I guess the idea is that since all the road work is going to be replaced and the buried infrastructure is aged and most of it was approaching the end of its service life, it made sense to replace it so you don't have to tear up the street anytime in the near future to do repairs. So by making all that underground stuff new, you should be trouble-free for many years to come, at least 20 to 40 years before you have to do any repairs. So it's a good investment. And the infrastructure was aging, particularly the sanitary sewer system. We had done inspections and we knew there were some issues there. So hopefully this will make Nick's job just a little bit easier going forward.
Well, we're going to hold you to those 20 years. You might get a call if we have problems in the next 2 decades.
I have no problem with that.
It'd be the first time ever a new street got paid and get tore up in the first month.
Well, it's...
Yeah, and I think it bears...
It is 2020.
Yeah, I know.
This is a project that, in terms of the scope, you know, we've done water work and you patch, or we've done small sections with regard to replacement of utilities, but to do all three of the major services, water, wastewater, and stormwater, a complete street rebuild is a very unusual project. Nick Novi, you and I talked, and outside of 281, when's the last time the city had a project of this magnitude in terms of basically building a road? There's
I think that was 1906, Mayor.
There might be some of
those pipes I bet are 100 years old in there.
Well, there might be some dead ends here or there. There might be some short sections of street, but when you look at 3/4 of a mile of road and a major one at that, this is quite the project. And really do appreciate the time and effort that, in addition to the faces, the voices that people have heard today, there's been some others heavily involved, and really does take a lot of people to make something like this come together. So as important as everything is, we really appreciate the efforts that you have all put in on behalf of the city of Cortland. Last call, any questions? Very good. So moving on, number 2 on our agenda. Consideration of resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract pursuant to notice of award to G.D. Vincente. How close am I? All right. I went with the downstate pronunciation. Motion to consider. John Bennett, second. Katie Silliman, discussion.
But my only question, it's kind of for Rick, is do we need the amount of the contract in there with this resolution, or just enter into a contract?
You should have an amount in it.
For posterity's sake. Right, where is Rick? There you are. But for
Did you include the package with the packet that everybody got?
I'm not sure if that went out to council.
Devin?
Their bid tabulation, you mean?
Yeah, the amount that they set forth.
I think council was aware of it, but I didn't.
Devin, did you put it in there?
No, it's not in there.
No.
No, I didn't receive anything for that.
Okay, we need to state the amount.
$9,088,000.
Thank you.
So 9,088,000. Right? 9,088,000.
Yep.
All right, and if we can make sure contract pursuant to notice and the amount of 9,088,000. I did ask for and I received the motion to entertain, correct? And there's been second. Council, further discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
A lot of time and effort in terms of the paperwork, and I know it's going to be a difficult 2 years in terms of the construction for many people throughout the city, but this is necessary work, and the only thing worse than dealing with the construction is not dealing with it. So I really appreciate the efforts going forward. Agenda item number 3, consideration resolution to retain the Bonneville Group for provision of financial audit services for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020. So that is this year. This would be work done after this year for this year. So motion to consider. John Bennett, second. Troy Beckwith, discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries 7-0. Agenda item number 4, resolution to accept, recognize, and appropriate the following donations to the Youth Bureau. We have a donation from Crown City Little League. Motion to consider. Katie Silliman, second. Troy Beckwith, discussion.
Many thanks.
Absolutely.
And I believe the genesis, John McNerney is here, but the genesis of this, people who had paid some fees and offered to let those fees come back to the city. This will support and supplant our resources. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. Number 5, resolution to request lifting the hiring freeze for 3 positions in the police department. And if it's on page 2, the positions are a senior account clerk, a clerk, and a police officer. So I'll ask for a resolution lifting the freeze, and then we will have a second in terms of hiring. So motion to consider. Jackie Chapman, second. Katie Stillman, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And motion carries 7-0. So now the next resolution, fill the following positions in the police department. And the first one is a senior account clerk, second is a clerk, third is police officer. Point of information, these are all current positions. We have 2 retirees, and we have a position where we have the officer who I believe has left the employ of the city. So 2 anticipated retirements and a vacant officer position. So motion to consider. John Bennett, second. Katie Silliman, discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Agenda item number 7, lift the hiring freeze for promotion of an operator 1 to operator 2 in a wastewater treatment plant. Motion to consider. Katie Silman, second. Tom Michaels, discussion. Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. So number 8, resolution to promote an operator 1 to operator 2 effective November 18, 2020. Motion to consider. John Bennett, second. Katie Silliman, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Number 9, resolution to lift the hiring freeze to hire a senior account clerk in the Department of Public Works. Kat McCarthy, do you have support? Katie Silliman, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And make sure that we're covering our bases. Let's add, call it 9B. Resolution to fill the position of senior account clerk in the Department of Public Works. John Bennett, second. Troy, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Carries. And number 10, so Ray and I have talked about this, and I believe we've given permission, but we did have a transfer, so I thought it was best, just in the interest of transparency, to bring it before council again. Another position that has been vacant, lift the hiring freeze to hire an account clerk in the city's clerk's office. Motion to consider. Jackie Chapman, second. Katie Silliman, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then permission to fill the position of account clerk in the city clerk's office. Motion to consider. John Bennett, second. Jackie Chapman, discussion.
So, is this a 10B?
Yeah.
Yes.
Will this
10B.
person, the city clerk's office, will this person take any of the load off of Devon?
Sort of. I think I understand what you're talking to with regard to work and talking about another department. I still think that's going to involve another discussion.
Okay.
And this is somebody transferring from a different spot over to this position?
Yeah, I was going to give this is a position that became vacant. We had a retiree in a different department, and the person in this position went to that position, more lucrative, and left this position vacant.
Okay.
Okay. This position has been so far filled by the deputy registrar at this time, but she's doing the work for 2 people. So.
Okay.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Carries. And then maybe I should have started with this point of clarification for the general public. These are positions that have been budgeted. The promotion has been delayed. Several of these positions, in terms of filling them, has been delayed due to the budget constraints. And as the city clerk, Mr. Parker, just mentioned, we've had people that have been doing beyond the capacity of what is ordinarily expected. It's created some hardships in terms of getting some tasks accomplished. And this is bringing us closer to being fully staffed. We still do have positions that are unfilled, but are necessary. We're just coping, kind of managing. But this is going to go a long ways towards helping our departments to continue to provide a high level of service to the general public. So thank you, Council, for your willingness to consider and approve all these positions. Number 11, resolutions amend the fire department's volunteer firefighters linked to service award program point award system when special response rules are in effect during the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020. Motion to consider. Katie Silliman, second. Jackie Chapman. Discussion.
Yeah, I just want to point out again for the public that there's no increased financial obligation by doing this, according to the chief. It seems like it's more a matter of paperwork than anything else. So it's not costing the city money to do this. I think people need to hear that.
Just to add on to Bruce, is that this initiative came down from the governor's office. I think Wayne could probably speak a little bit more on that.
Well, in the memo,
I'm here, Mayor. Can you hear me?
There you go.
All right. Yep. So just briefly, as in the memo, recognizing volunteer fire service in New York State petitioned the governor's office to express a concern about this program, which many fire districts, fire departments, and municipalities have in New York, which provides a minuscule type retirement for volunteer firefighters for length of service. The city's had this since 1994, and so we've participated in this, and we award volunteers this on their activity levels. With the COVID pandemic coming through, I was forced to shut down some activities, from meetings to trainings, and even some call responses that the volunteers would typically go on, which give them credit for this program. So by scaling that back, they weren't eligible for the same point accruals as they typically would be. So this was an executive order by the governor allowing the municipalities to consider granting them various points to help them attain what they would typically get in a normal year. So obviously it's not a normal year, so this is an opportunity for them to maintain. And as I run the numbers and look at things very quickly, this will help the people that do the work, have done the work, and will be credited with the work, but it will not cost us any more. We're not going to push a whole bunch of people up over the edge and have a significant increase at all. It's going to be at or below what it typically is. So it helps out the volunteers that haven't been able to come around as much because of the pandemic and us scaling it back.
Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, thanks, Chief.
Any other questions for Chief regarding this? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And opposed? Carries. I don't know, Chief, you called it an unusual year. I think this is pretty similar to every year you've been Chief, so. Let's move on to the next agenda, item number 12, resolution for authorization to sign a contract with Pleasant Valley Electric Incorporated, amount of $39,950 to design and install a fire alarm system at the headquarters fire station. $32,380.95 is reimbursed by an assistant to firefighters grant, and the balance will be paid by the fire department's operating budget. Low of 2 bids received. Motion to consider. Katie Silliman, second. John Bennett. Discussion.
Yeah, can we have Mike speak to this a little bit? Mike, did you write this grant?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. This is a grant, just like it says, we got a grant to replace or to put in a fire alarm system. That's something we've never had at the headquarters fire station. I think it's an important thing to protect our investment. It's a 107-year-old building with no fire alarm system. I think that goes without saying that that's not the best idea. So we're going to get a fire alarm system in there. 95% of the cost is covered, of the budgeted cost, I should say, is covered by the Assistance to Firefighters grant. We were with the update in fire code, we had a little bit increased expense. That's why it's a little bit more on our cost share, but we can still cover it through our operating budget between this year and next year. And we're really looking forward to getting it moving forward.
Is that a state grant, a federal grant? Is it a private foundation?
It is a federal grant. It's through the Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, which is part of FEMA.
Okay.
Mr. Mike.
Captain, that I was a little surprised to see the price of that install. You have you seen the actual layout of the building for the system?
Yes. They submitted drawings to us of how they plan to do it. We went out to competitive bid. We sent out to contractors. We had 2 responses. This was the low bid. The other bid was actually over $80,000. So this is the low bid by quite a margin. We had only received the other bid. I honestly don't know what we would have done. I am familiar with Pleasant Valley's work, both through the code office, and I am on the board of Tompkins County 4-H, and we've done some business with them, and I've been very happy with them in that capacity. So I was not at all unhappy about having Pleasant Valley be the low bidder, because I know they do good work.
I also understand this is going to be tied into the 911 center.
It will be, yes. And this is going to include 5 years of monitoring at no additional cost. After that, there will be a cost to it in the range of between $300 and $400 per year.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Yeah, there were, when this came forward, I think for the general public, just to make sure people are aware, there's times when the fire station could potentially be unoccupied if there's a major alarm. And there's also times it is a large enough structure where if something were to happen in one section of the building and people are not there, there could be a fair amount of damage. So this is a very good move on the city's part to kind of give you pause when you think, okay, how many people your house is outfitted, and yeah, you can set alarms in different rooms, but when you think large structures, it's important to have proper protection. So this is a necessary, and we're really appreciative of the effort to make sure that we're able to afford it. So thank you, Captain.
If you recall, Mayor, there was a fire in the fire station not too long ago. And I think it was, Mayor Gallagher was under his tenure.
Gosh. Well, the building's still standing, and we want to keep it for a couple more years. This will keep us where we need to be, hopefully. Very good. Number 13, resolution to authorize the placement of a $2 million tax anticipation note to fund city operations in January of 2021. Motion to consider. Katie Silliman. Jackie Chapman, discussion. So this is.
I agree with Tom.
What?
I agree with Tom.
I missed what Tom said. All right.
It's there if we need it.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. The question is, when we hit January, people pay their taxes, but sometimes people don't pay, believe it or not, on January 1st, January 2nd. And there is a potential where the city, we know there's revenue coming in, but we may not have that money on hand. So to make sure that we are not going to be cash poor and unable to pay some bills, or we bounce a check. The idea is that we do this. Interestingly enough, I have spoken to other officials, similar entities, be it school districts or other municipalities, and this is more common than we might think, and the general public might think. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Carries. Number 14, resolution approving a local law making the charter and administrative code gender neutral. Motion to consider.
That's
Pat Carthy. Second. Katie Sullivan. Discussion. Well, for the general public, this is an undertaking that we took a couple of, gosh, it seems like yesterday, a couple of months ago, with the idea of making sure that anybody who reads the charter does not imply that any positions or other things are specific to one gender or the other. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. Agenda item number 15. Resolution to direct the city clerk of Republica to publish a notice transferring city-owned property at 16 Harmon Avenue to Joseph Peters and James and Katie Fitzgerald. They are adjoining landowners, subject to a permissive referendum within 45 days of the publishing of the notice. Motion to consider. Becky Chapman, second. Tom Michaels, discussion. So what happened was the property used to have a house that was not just dilapidated, but a potential safety issue. And it was on a section of property. That property is not up to code in terms of the size. We have two adjoining property owners who have expressed interest in acquiring the property. A couple of years ago, when Carlos Ferrer was alderman, he pushed forward and successfully advocated. We took down the substandard structure, and the city still owns the property, and we don't want to own the property anymore. We think it would be better put to use to let the neighbors own it.
Are we just giving it to them? Or are they paying a nominal fee for it? Rick, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, they've offered $6,000 for the property, and we'll pay that after the 45 days. It's a basic value. We got a lot of use out of the property with practice for both police and fire as a vacant premises. So this is with it unable to be a building lot, it's a fair price.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. And number 16, setting a date for a public hearing on a local law adopting a method for the abandonment in streets and highways. Rick, can you give an explanation, please?
I can. We have had opportunities and necessity to abandon streets for a variety of economic development or development relative to the hospital. There's been recent legislation that requires that our charter have a process in place so that there's no question about how to go about doing that. I have anticipated that we're going to be seeing an application or a petition for the closure of Alvina Ave relative to the Guthrie expansions. And so in anticipation of that, I'm asking that you consider the passage of this bill that simply sets forth the process by which the council, the Department of Public Works, the mayor considers abandoning streets or highways. So this is a more generic approach, but it's in no way unseeing of what's going to be coming relative to Alvena Ave and Guthrie's additions.
Thank you.
Tom.
Regarding abandoning these streets, the city's still required to maintain them. Am I correct?
No, once they're abandoned, they become private property, and they'll become the obligation of who we abandon it to. In this instance, if we're using Alvena, Guthrie will then be required to maintain that street. All of our efforts in this particular instance with Guthrie will require right-of-way so that we can maintain the sewer and water system that's underneath.
That's where I was headed. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Is there a fee associated with somebody taking over abandoned street, Rick?
There is not. There's a significant amount of cost involved in doing that, but that's between Guthrie and their private contractors. Most of the work on my end is my end that I'm. So there's not a particular cost to the city.
No, I didn't mean that. I mean, do we just give them the street? Do they pay us again a nominal fee for using the street?
No, this will be an abandonment as surplus property, given their objective and use.
Okay.
Do we need to set a date? Next council meeting? Would that be acceptable?
December 1st?
Yes. Yeah, you should have in your packet a proposed local law relative to it that you've seen.
Yeah.
Is there?
Does that mean with council approval? 7 p.m. December 1st.
Yes.
Yes. Very good. So
just to let you know, I'm okay with that, Mayor, but I'm not gonna be able to make that December 1st meeting. I know that ahead of time, but I'm fine with folks doing that. Rick's explaining this to me. I have a problem with it.
Very good. Yeah. This was going to be good for the whole community when things are continuing to develop very well there in Guthrie Cortland region. All right, so December 1st, we will have the public hearing and make sure to put public notice up. Number 17, COVID and response. Not going to touch too much. I think everybody is aware in terms of the increase in cases and what's happening with regard to restrictions. Any place that has a license with the State Liquor Authority must close at 10, gyms as well. And the idea is trying to reduce the potential for transmission of COVID-19. So we need to continue to stress with everybody to adhere to these standards, adhere to these expectations, wearing the mask, washing hands, maintaining distance. And even if you're not really a believer, if you're skeptical, please do it for your neighbors, because we are seeing issues, and we've been fortunate that we've been able to manage the cases. Two things that are taking place. A lot of concern has come forward, and have been very appreciative in terms of SUNY Cortland, the way Fred Pierce, the communications director, has attended numerous council meetings to share what the college is planning and what they've been doing. And even with that level of communication, I think there's still people that have not heard, because we're talking about it here at the council meetings. So we are going to have a opportunity. I've been talking with the administration from the college, where administrators and students are going to meet with myself and desk counsel Tom Michaels and Bruce Teitler are going to join, and we're going to have some conversations with the college. Part of this will be to help promote and make sure everybody's aware of what the expectations are, and also in terms of response. So this past semester, there were some questions that would come forward, and in my opinion, I feel like when the issues came forward, we were able to deal with them effectively and in a timely manner. We want to make sure that we continue to do so. and we're going to have some good dialogue and conversations. And part of that would be making sure that we are communicating not just between SUNY and the city, but also to the general public. Part of that is also hearing from the general public. So as concerns come forward, we do want to hear them. And we want to be able to have the opportunity to address them in a timely manner. So we're going to have some good discussions with the idea of keeping everybody for our community safe. Another part about that, we're going to go from talking about older students to some younger students. There's been a couple of conversations, and we're making, we might be making some progress. So I think many people might remember that 3 or 4 short weeks ago, the state brought in testing, and there was COVID-19 testing. It took place at 3 locations throughout the county. It was Homer Intermediate, the Cortland High School, and then I believe Marathon High School. And it was free. People could sign up, come in, get tested. There were some cases that came forward. There were some people that, there were a fair number that did not come forward, and that's okay, because it's better if you're not sure to get tested and know that you're negative. Well, apparently when the state left, the testing machines were left, and there's an opportunity to potentially use those. I've been continuing to stress the importance within the city and with others of us trying to test, in particular, first responders and essential workers, people that have to come in contact with others. If we could do periodic testing, it would be best in terms of protecting our staff and, in turn, the general public. So when I talk first responders, police, fire, ambulance, these are people that are on the front lines and come face to face with people every day. And if there are issues where people are not aware, if they've contracted the virus and they can potentially spread it, that's a major concern. So for their personal well-being and for the well-being of the community, we're trying to chip away at ways that we can have regular testing. Part of that, as I mentioned earlier, talking about going to younger kids, we have now seen with our school district, the city of Cortland Enlarged District, not 1 but 2 pauses to in-person learning at the high school. So I've had some good conversations with one of our legislators, Kathy Bischoff, and also with Superintendent Bob Edwards from the school. We are continuing the conversations. So the county has machines, and they've got some tests, but not a lot, and it's difficult to get the tests. They don't have the people that can do the testing. Well, come to find out that in conversations with our Fire Chief Wayne Friedman, our firefighters that are EMTs are actually able to do testing. And it just so happens that 3 weeks ago, we had some of our staff that working for the state were involved in the testing. So we had some firefighters that were actually doing this several weeks ago. So we are having ongoing discussions, and the idea here is we want to do more in terms of testing locally. And philosophically, if we can test first responders and if we can test school-age children, that's going to do a couple things. We're going to protect general public that must have emergency services, and we're going to protect our emergency service providers. And we want to be able to try to keep schools throughout the county open as long as possible. Every time a district, and it doesn't matter if it's high school, middle school, or elementary age, every time a district has to put kids into distance learning, it's a disruption in the education process. And if we can find a way to help the schools continue to maintain in-person learning, and part of that is also the fact that with younger learners, there's also the childcare component. So if you have an 8-year-old and now they have to learn remotely for 2 weeks, and you're a single parent and you work, or mom and dad both work, what do you do? So there's disruptions in terms of the children and their learning environment. There's disruptions for people that are members of our community, and our goal is to try to help find a way that we can minimize this disruption. So these conversations are ongoing, and I'd like to be able to present, hey, here's the plan, here's what we're going to do. But at this point, I want to keep council informed because it's not just in the process, but there will come a question at some point, how do we fund this? And we're going to need to have some discussions. I continue to view the city as being priority driven, and that drives the finances. And to simply look and say that our budget, well, we can't afford to do this, would be a disservice, in my opinion, to the public. Because if we can provide a service to the community that will allow businesses to stay open because their employees are going to show up, it's going to protect people, not just our workers, but also children throughout the community, and in turn, their family members. We have to figure out how can we do this, not whether or not we can afford to do this. So as we go forward, we're going to try to figure out how to do this and how to do it in a financially effective manner. But I will, at some point, most likely be asking council for support in this endeavor. Questions?
Brian, quick question on the college. I believe they're done with for Thanksgiving break. Do you know if the kids are allowed to go home and come back, or what's going on with the college as for Thanksgiving break?
Good question. So when the students leave for the Thanksgiving break, that will be essentially the last day. Well, the last day of classes before break is the Tuesday of Thanksgiving week. Then it is all remote learning. They are remote learning through them, and the on-campus students will not be returning to the campus. Off-campus students, it's going to be up to them and the agreements that they have with their respective landlords.
Yeah. Can I add a little bit?
Remote learning.
I was at a meeting last night, yesterday. Can I add a little bit to that? Again,
absolutely.
Just so that Troy and everybody, according to what I discovered yesterday with the meeting at the college, the students are leaving this week. They're already going home. They have to test negative before they can go home. The good news is we're going to be having a lot of our own kids, college students, coming back into town from the various SUNYs, and they are supposed to have also been tested negative, so that sort of helps us as well. They're not coming back until February 1st, so they're going to be gone from now until February 1st, which is a double-edged sword to some extent, I think, for our community, but the kids, students will not be coming back until then. And when they do come back, they have to have had a negative test 3 days before they arrive, or else they'll be tested when they get here. So that's how the college is going to handle that. And West Campus is pretty much going to be just for quarantine. They set that aside in case they need to do that. So I think that pretty much, and I think everybody knows that, but there's no winter sports. So I guess I'm just sort of repeating those. So to recap that, there's no winter sports. Students are going home starting this week. They're not coming back till February 1st. They have to have a negative test 3 days before they get here, or they have to be tested when they get here. And that's the big thing. So that's sort of an update on what's going on at the college. That's a good question, Troy. Thanks.
I also have a question.
Katie.
A large number of students live in off-campus housing. They aren't necessarily going home. If they do go home, they're not necessarily going to stay away until February. We still see a lot of cars in driveways. And my concern is that SUNY's vigilance over these students, because they're not coming to class, they're remotely learning, that the administration's vigilance over these students will be more lax and be left up to the neighbors to phone in parties to the police. And I do not think that burden should be on the neighborhoods. That does not build a comfortable neighborhood. So
that's a really good point, Katie, and I think that's something Tom and I and the mayor, and when we're talking with the SUNY folks about this going forward would bring that up. I think that's a good point. Yes, and I think thank you for that clarification, because Troy, the students I was talking about was students around campus, and the off-campus students are obviously a different situation. So yeah, thanks.
I just want to say about my neighbors that I do see them wearing masks as they walk around the neighborhood, and we all really appreciate that. They are wearing masks in the neighborhood, and as you all know, I'm a teacher and I work in Homer, and I work with kids age 5 to 11, and they wear masks all day long, every single day, and they don't complain about it. There is no reason why any adult in our community cannot put a mask on. And if you want to make it a political statement, fine, write it on your mask, but wear it.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Katie. I agree with you on everything you just said. And I guess I just want to give a shout out to the community again of, folks, we've been doing this for 9 months. We have another 6 months ahead of us probably before the vaccines are available, etc. But we can get through this. This is not the time to give up. This is the time to dig a little deeper, and we're in this together. When we come through the other side, I'm going to be the first to advocate for the city to throw a citywide celebration. Let's shut down the streets and we'll all dance in the streets, and it will happen. But we have to get through this before we can do that. So, keep on masking on, I guess. So you're right, Katie. We can do this. We can do this.
Further comments? Let's see. A couple reminders. We do have a budget workshop scheduled for City Council Thursday, 5 to 6:30 p.m. So 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. this Thursday. Make sure that public is aware. And we are working on, it has been a different year in a lot of respects, but we are still having discussions and working on the potential for a tree lighting ceremony for the city. We're just trying to figure out how to do it with safe social distancing. So we'll have more information coming on that. It's a little bit more complicated than past years, but we think it's something that is still much appreciated by the public and be a good thing for us to do. And we know that last announcement, we're coming up on another holiday, Thanksgiving. And when you listen to the experts and the pundits, a lot of people are saying that the current increase in terms of cases throughout the country is probably related to Halloween activities. So I really want to encourage everybody to make appropriate holiday plans and make sure that you're spending time with your inner circle in terms of your family. And part of this is, in years past, the evening before Thanksgiving has typically been a festive night for a lot of people. And my advice, my ask is that we maintain our priorities, make it about your family, the close family that you have, your loved ones, and make it a little bit less about a larger group of people and potentially being out with large numbers of people. And if we do that, we're going to continue to see good numbers in terms of what's happening in the community. All right, I did ask council for an opportunity to catch you up on labor negotiations, which are contractual and therefore are subject to the opportunity for executive session. So I have 2 items, and I'd ask council, can we entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss labor negotiations? Get the motion by John Bennett and then second by Troy Beckwith. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hand raised. Any opposed? So what I've done is I've created a breakout room, and I'm going to start to assign counsel and the city attorney. What we're going to need, I do not believe we are taking, we are not taking any action afterwards. Hard part for me is just trying to figure out where everybody is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Rick. I'm looking for a lot, but it's Rick. 7, and let's see. Yeah, not great. People are more than welcome to go.